Welcome back. This is episode 10. Are we on 10? Did we make it to double digits? I think we did.
We survived this long.
Episode 10, the next 5 chapters of Mistborn, so chapter 6 to 10 inclusive. Our journey in the Cosmere continues. So before we catch up, I'm just curious, what is your overall feel of the book so far?
I like it a lot. Keep in mind, dear listeners and viewers, that Mike and I have been a bit of a hiatus. I think the last time we did our podcast episode was, I'm looking at it now.
Sometime last month.
Let's see here. Sometime in, it says November.
Okay, yeah. So Christmas and all that New Year's stuff kind of...
Sometime a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Somewhere. So it is episode 10, so we got that right.
Nice.
I do enjoy the book so far. And
Awesome.
I've met many a Sanderson enjoyer throughout the past couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
That have proclaimed that it's going to get better from here. So more people confirming what you've been telling me, Mike, is that the best is yet to come.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's from here. It definitely gets a lot better.
But so far, it's actually super enjoyable to read. I find it flows really well. I've also been reading a few other books this time. I also finished 3 other books between November to now. One of them was awful. I didn't like it. Don't recommend it. But it's very decisive. Mike, do you recall of the name Murakami?
Yeah, Haruki Murakami. Yeah, I've read a lot of his books.
Have you? Okay. The one I finished reading, or I guess it's like 3 books, but it's like a series, is 1Q84.
Not my favorite.
Not okay, good, because it was not good. I didn't like it at all. And
is that your first Murakami book?
It is my first Murakami book.
Okay, that's a shame. His older stuff, like there's this book called Kafka on the Shore, which is very good. This guy spends time with a talking cat. His most recent release, Killing Commendatore, is a very weird sort of supernatural Japanese story, which is also very good. Yeah, but 1Q84, not my favorite. I actually don't know if I might have stopped reading it. I like halfway through because I just didn't like it. And that's rare for me with a Murakami book.
It was rare for me for any book, really. It was just yes, I get weird. I love reading weird or bizarre fiction, like China Millville. Fantastic author. I highly recommend you read Perdido Street Station or Unlondon.
I've heard of
but 1Q84, it just was really gross and just wasn't, I don't know, particularly good. And then I cleansed my palate with a Margaret Atwood, Elias Grace. Phenomenal book. Anyone should read that. And then I started cracking open a Terry Pratchett one, Unseen Academics. So
cool.
So a little humor to
Is that a fall in the Discworld purview?
It does. I think it does. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does, because it does. Yeah, it's on the turtle, and this turtle always. Yeah. So it's it follows, like, when Terry Pratchett wrote a bunch of these books. I think later on in his years, he started really focusing on a city called Ankh-Morpork and all of the denizens that live and made it the city that it is, and how it's beginning. It felt like how a London, like UK, sort of began to become a very prominent power after, like, the British Empire dissolved. It feels like that, but it's very humorous. It's very Terry Pratchett, and it's really good. This one in particular, it's about wizards trying to continue a tradition of football, like the soccer in their terms, or else the tyrant of the city will be removing few of their privileges. So it's following that.
That's cool.
That story. It's really good.
Yeah, that's
but
awesome.
I'm excited to get back into Mistborn. Finally, into Mistborn.
Hopefully we can in 2024 we can do this a little more frequently and maybe get through a few books.
Yeah, and also finished Valor, I think. Yeah, from John
Valor,
Gwynne.
right? Yes, yeah. I'm hoping to finish that this week.
You
it's an okay
better.
book. Yeah, we will. We'll get caught up.
It's okay.
It's
It
okay.
gets better, and I
Yeah, for
haven't
sure.
cracked open the third one yet, but I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I've
pumped to do
heard
so.
that this one of those series that gets better over time, and that in fact the like there's this series, and then there's the one that follows up it that it follows up on, and that one's supposed to be very, very good, which is also another trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
How
So
about
other
you?
than oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Other than how are you, Mike? It's my turn to ask you that.
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, the holidays were a bit busy, so one of the reasons we couldn't get to all of this. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I've just been doing little projects around the house. I set up a media server the other day just because I'm starting to get a little fed up with all of these streaming services. So going my own route, we'll say. I won't go further than that, but yeah, got that all set up and it's working well. So that was fun, and work is not slowing down, but a little more comfortable for me. And yeah, I don't know, things are pretty good. I haven't been reading as much, which is unfortunate, but getting back into it since the start of the new year and since the break. And yeah, hoping to get through more. And I am enjoying this reread because at the end of this year is the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive is coming out.
Ooh.
Which is Sanderson's like epic fantasy. Like each one of those books is 1,200 to 1,400 pages, and they're like massive undertakings, and it's a really, really great series. I don't think we'll get there by the end of the year. I mean, that it'd be cool if we did, but yeah, that'll be a little tough. But either
with
way,
our pace, we might get through the first book of Mistborn.
Year 1, Mistborn 1.
Oh man.
No, we'll get through it. Yeah, that's basically it. Not too much else going on for me. So I'm glad I got your thoughts on the book so far. For me, as like the reread, I'm like with all I think fiction, like especially like fantasy, the second time through you pick up on a lot more. I noticed this. I haven't done many rereads of a lot of the bigger books that I've read, but I did notice it when I rewatched Game of Thrones. I've watched that series a couple times, and the second time and third time through, you just pick up on so much more, and you see a lot of the foreshadowing and other things that they hid throughout the series. And I'm getting that with this series so far, and I'm actually really enjoying kind of just getting taken back into this world, because where I'm at now with the Cosmere, which is past Stormlight and into Mistborn era 2 and so forth, this feels like it was so long ago. So it's cool to like come back to it and see how it sort of has played out, and like knowing how it's played out and seeing those sort of bricks being laid in the beginning. It's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I feel awful for not asking what you thought about the book, because that's what you asked me first.
It's all good. It's not like
it's been a while since we did our podcast.
Show. Exactly. Yeah, no worries here. So yeah, with that, why don't we just get into it? I mean,
right on.
Yeah, we want to get a couple episodes this year, so the faster we go through this, the better. No, I'm just kidding. So
speed run.
Yeah, let's speed run it. So the next, we were starting from chapter 6 and going to chapter 10, and chapters 6 to 8 are the conclusion of part 1. And then, chapter 10, 9 and 10 are the start of part 2, which for me, so just as a quick overview, these few chapters and the chapters at the beginning of part 2 were all like setup chapters for me. Like they're sort of, we're getting more comfortable with the cast of characters. We're getting more comfortable with the magic system. Nothing... there hasn't been any big risks taken by the crew or any of the main characters yet. This is a lot of sort of like building up the world. And yeah, that's cool. I think that's important and needed in a book like this, because we're going to be using these sort of tools that they're giving us in the magic system or little bits of lore throughout the rest of the book. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying how this book is structured. I am liking it a lot more than Elantris for sure.
Oh my goodness, leaps and bounds better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that Elantris was bad. It was just Mistborn is a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. You can tell he got a lot better as a writer for this one. Cool. So chapter 6. So if I remember correctly, and you'll have to, I didn't take too detailed of notes, because actually one thing I did notice is that when we're reading through 5 chapters, it's actually quite chunkier than it is with Elantris. I think 5 chapters in Elantris could be like 30 to 50 pages, and 5 chapters in Mistborn is like 150 pages. So my notes aren't as detailed, but we'll try to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, chapter 6. This is one where we get more introduced and more acquainted with all of the cast of characters in our heist crew, and this is the chapter where they do a lot of the sort of planning. So like, in movies like Ocean's 11 or other heist movies, they over quick cuts of like what the plan is. So this is them coming up with what the plan is going to be for their plan to take over the city of Luthadel and give it to the rebels.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off in a carpentry shop, which turns out to be the one owned by Clubs. So Clubs is rare amongst the Ska because he's not like a farm worker or a slave. He's actually a skilled tradesman. There's not many of him. And he has a bunch of apprentices. I think we later find... Remind me, do you remember what Clubs' power... He's a smoker. That's what he is.
He's a smoker.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all of his apprentices, who are apprentice carpenters, well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are also smokers. They're his like apprentices in carpentry and in learning how to be a misting. So while all of the crew is inside this building or within the area, they can use their powers freely, and Clubs and his other apprentices always have the quote unquote smoke up so that they can't be detected for using their powers. Yeah. So it's a meeting in this place. So Vin is living. I think this might actually happen later, that Vin gets a room, or maybe it happens when she comes in. I can't remember, but she ends up living in this place. And she gets a room. And then the next day is when Kelsier holds his meeting with all of the crew members, and he gets out a blackboard and he starts writing things down. Like, these are the problems that we need to solve. And they go through each crew member trying to solve each problem. Now, I don't remember exactly what each problem was, but I think I remember most of the solutions. So one was recruiting people. And so Breeze is there. He's a soother. They're going to use him to soothe the emotions of the Ska to try and get them to become more amenable to joining the rebellion. There is Ham, who's the pewter arm, and he's going to be in charge, I think, of training the soldiers. Him or Doxson, one of those two is in charge of training the soldiers. I think it's Ham.
It's Ham.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
Because Doc is more, because he is not a misting. So his is more just like administrative stuff. And he's got the dealings with the underworld as well. Like, he's got the connections with the people in the underworld. So he is sort of doing that side of thing. Yedin is the one running the rebellion. And
we get a bit of a cold feet from Yedin as well.
Yes.
Like, he's wondering, like, if we're going to recruit so many people, we're going to be cramming these and I can't put them in the city. And so they bring up the caves, or the caverns, I guess, with only by mention. But
that's right. There's that funny scene too. Sorry, go. Who?
I'm trying to remember the name. Argua?
Of the caves?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Okay. I think it's something like that. But there is that funny scene where Kelsier or someone, or Doc, is just like, yeah, we can just put them in the caves that the rebellion keeps. And Yedin's like, you know about those?
Yeah, that's like, right. He's like, oh, panic.
Yeah, he's like, everybody knows about those caves. It's no secret. And I think they estimate that they could hold something like 20,000 people. So I'm pretty sure that's what they said is their goal for recruitment. Yeah, I mean, Clubs is the smoker. Oh, right. There's what was the other problem?
Marsh shows up at the end.
Marsh does show up at the end, and we will touch on that for sure. And yeah, Vin has the key idea. Oh, okay. This is the one that I was. So before we get to that, this is the one that I was thinking of, was how they're going to create chaos, like sow chaos in the city, and was Kelsier's idea to get the noble houses to be at each other's throats. So his plan is to use his Mistborn powers to carry out different sort of assassinations and robbings or thievings, whatever you want to call them, of all of the other noble houses, to make them think that the nobles are sending Mistborns against each other. So like, they're using their Mistborns against other houses, and they wants to create like a house war. And there's a little mention that apparently something like this has happened before, like something like 800 years ago or something. So yeah, that's how they're going to sow all the chaos. And then Vin's idea, do you remember what it is? I'm putting you on the spot.
Was it like infiltrating or something like that?
It was so they were
Uh,
trying to figure out a way to get the Lord Ruler out of the city.
yeah, and it's going to be with the cave or the not the caves, the excavation site that Kelsier
Yes.
was from
The
to
pits of
attack that.
Hathsin.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's a really good idea when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because there's this metal that Kelsier uses and Mistborn's use called adium. And
Mhm.
we don't know yet what the powers of it are, but we know that the Lord Ruler hoards it all and sells a little bit to the noble houses here and there. So it's one of the most valuable things in the world. And he also has a huge stash of it.
Mhm.
And I don't know, believe if it's this chapter or sometime before, but we do learn that where adium is mined is the pits of Hathsin. So
Mhm.
when people get punished and sent there as a sentence, it is a death sentence because he can't have people leaving and saying, "Hey, this is where adium is mined," because nobody knows where it comes from. Um,
Except for Kelsier.
exactly. He's the only one to ever
Yeah.
survive. Yeah. So yeah, a great idea by Vin. Their plan is to attack the pits of Hathsin and
Mm.
draw the Lord Ruler out of Luthadel with his garrison, and then the rebels can come in, take the city, and once they're in and holding it, the city is built in such a way that there's walls around it, so they feel like they're confident that they can hold the city from a force. It's just taking it from a force that's the hard part.
Yeah. I was mixing it up with the front that they're using as a noble house
Oh,
that
Lord
they're going to
Renault's
get.
house.
Yeah, which, if I recall, this one's a bit vague
Hmm.
of why they're doing it, but it's from what I understand, it's simply a matter of infiltrating the other noble houses and finding out what's going on and
Yeah.
causing more chaos and
Yes.
sedition.
Yeah, so that was one of the plans. I don't remember what the original idea was, but or who the original person was, but they have
Mhm.
Renault's house, and they were going to use him to someone related to that house, maybe Renault himself, to start going to events to
Mhm.
infiltrate and get intel from some of the noble houses, and also, yeah, so chaos, another sort of agent to do that aside from Kelsier. The other part that they're using him for as well is for what is it? Buying weapons,
Mhm.
because they can't. Ska cannot buy weapons in the volume that they need, but lords
Mhm.
can because they're expected to sort of have a
A
force.
police force, yeah,
Yeah,
or some
that
sort
they
of military force.
exactly, yeah, some sort of like private military force that they maintain. So yeah, what we do find out is that the original Lord Renault was murdered by Kelsier, and he's been replaced by a quote unquote actor.
Mhm.
There's an allusion to what this actor is, but they don't actually talk about. They don't reveal that yet, so I won't either. There's also a little bit of a discussion, like the religious implications of this. So there is actually a fair amount of religion in this book, which sort of reveals itself later in the chapters.
Mhm.
But yeah, Vin brings up that the Lord Ruler is like he's God in this world. Like he is like when you curse, instead of saying "Oh God," you say Lord Ruler as the curse. So there's like a little bit of religious questioning as to whether or not they should be doing this. And then at the very end is like what you said is when Marsh shows up, Kelsier's brother. But this chapter, so basically this chapter ends with Marsh showing up. I think
Mhm.
Yedden is also like really shocked because Marsh used to be in Yedden's position. He was the guy who ran the rebellion.
Mhm.
And then Marsh and Kelsier tell everyone to get out, and that they're going to have their own private discussion, of which Vin doesn't allow it to be private.
No, the next chapter, Vin does a bit of eavesdropping, and we find out what they're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And if we jump into chapter 7,
Yep.
um, Kelsier, before all of this happens, where it feels like throughout the book that Kelsier's had the mind for leadership, for change. But
Mm-hmm.
before, no, he was just goofing around, having fun, not really taking anything seriously. And
Mm-hmm.
Marsh was the one that was the leader, making directions for a bigger, better world for the Ska.
Yep.
But it becomes apparent that Kelsier's point of view, and maybe align with the same time that Marsh got a bit burnt from the last time they tried to overthrow and conquer the city or last time they organized an attempt to do so. And Kelsier was captured and sent to the pits, and someone that Kelsier, maybe like romantic or a friend, had died, and that was, that conviction of loss and the punishment he received has changed Kelsier so much that we see him in this way. And so Marsh comes back to sort of give Kelsier a warning to stop and to ask him what's changed.
Yeah.
And essentially saying, like, this is madness, but Kelsier says, no, we have a way.
Right.
And kind of brings Marsh back into the fold, but I don't recall to what extent Marsh's role is, unless it's more of a administrative role like Dockson does, where he just keeps tabs of what's happening in the city, and I don't know.
Right.
Do you remember?
Yes. So Marsh's role is to infiltrate the ministry. So at the beginning we had those, what were they called? Obligators?
Obligators, Inquisitors.
And Steel Inquisitors, the big bads.
Steel Inquisitors.
Yeah. So he's tasked with infiltrating that organization. That's if he'll take up the job, that's what he wants to do. And yeah, what you were talking about is exactly right, in that Kelsier has changed a lot, and I don't think at this point Marsh trusts that he's changed. He still thinks that he's the same guy that he's known all his life. So that's why he's not on board with the plan. Well, one of the reasons why he's not on board in the plan. But yeah, they have this whole discussion, and basically it leaves it still up in the air. Marsh is considering the plan, but he doesn't know. Yeah, but yeah, the role is for him to be a mole in the Steel Ministry. So Kelsier does notice Vin eavesdropping, and as she quickly runs to her room to hide or whatever, as he walks by the hallway, he knocks on her door and like basically just lets her know that he knew that she was listening.
Yeah.
And then
she feigns innocent. She's like, no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Still a bit of a child. And this is the first sort of training session with Mistborn powers. So Vin gets a Mistborn cloak, or a mist cloak, from Kelsier. And because people with these powers are generally noble born, and Mistborns are very, very sort of like highly regarded and rare, the fact that they're walking around with their cloaks on means that they won't get bothered by guard patrols or anything like that. So they can just sort of go about their business. And yeah, this is when we basically get like what?
Well, I was thinking about that. Like, can anyone just not don a mist cloak and claim that they're from a house? I'm assuming.
I guess they could. Yeah.
Guards would, question Mistborns or people wearing mist cloaks and say, "All right, hold up. Why are you here? You got the whole get up, but." What were they going to make them do? Like push this coin out of the air?
I think it would also maybe just be like too dangerous for them to question a Mistborn, a regular person, because that Mistborn has so many ways to kill them. But yeah, you're right. That is sort of kind of weird. Yeah,
it's kind of weird. Yeah. And another thing, before we move on to Vin and Kelsier doing their training outside the walls. Is Marsh part of the ministry? Is that why he's able to? That's why Kelsier was able to ask him to do something so trivial like that, because he's already in there.
Yeah, he has some way in. You're right. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there is a reason why he was selected to be the one to be the mole in the Steel Ministry. But yeah, I can't remember exactly why.
Okay, because he's not an Inquisitor. He's not an Obligator. So I guess my maybe it's revealed later on. Maybe it's just like a clerk or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It is. So there is talk that like the people who enter the ministry are all mistings, and Marsh is a misting as well. I can't remember what his power is. So that might help him get in. But yeah, there's something else. But it's lost. I can't remember exactly what it is. But yeah, so now we get the lore dump, how the powers work, pushing and pulling. Right. If you push on something and it has nowhere to go, then you're going to be the one that moves, all that kind of stuff, which is fun. The magic system is great. And yeah, this chapter ends with Vin learning how to push against. So he has, Kelsier has this metal ingot, which I think is the one that he used previously to take down dudes when he infiltrated Lord Venture's place and stole the adium. So he had like an ingot that he was like pushing and pulling around and hitting people in the head with. I think this is probably the same one.
Most likely.
Yeah. And he puts it on the ground and you push on it and you essentially fly up into the air. So this chapter ends with Kelsier doing it first, and then Vin doing it to get on top of the wall that surrounds Luthadel.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Go ahead.
There's two things in chapter 7 I think are part of chapter 7.
Okay.
Or is it chapter 8? The Mist Wraith? I think it's chapter 8.
That's chapter
right?
8. Yes.
Okay. And then they're actually out there for a reason. It's going to the house. What's it called? Renoux House Renoux.
Yeah.
Elsewhere. So is that later on? I feel like
that's chapter 8. Yeah. So chapter 8.
Getting out of myself.
That's all good. It's all good. Yeah. Chapter 8 starts with them on top of the wall, and then Kelsier summons the ingot to his hand, throws it over the side, and jumps over. And he tells Vince, like, you got to jump over too. And she's afraid. And he's like, well, these guards are coming, so either get caught or jump. She jumps. It doesn't go perfectly, but Kelsier manages to use allomancy to save her. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this is when they're outside. The reader, us, and Vin are also wondering, like, what the hell are we doing outside of the walls? The mists are everywhere. And they're just kind of like sneaking around in the backside, the countryside. And this is when we see the Mist Wraith. Yeah, which is a very, very cool kind of sighting. One of the cool creatures in this world.
So neat. Because before this, I thought, I wasn't expecting like mystical creatures at all. Like when they were complaining, or in the beginning, in the first chapter, I think, or like the prologue, sorry. All the ska saying, "Oh, you'll be captured by a mist wraith or whatever." Yep. I thought maybe that was an old wives' tale to keep the kids out.
Mm-hmm.
But then here we are. We see an actual mist wraith full of like different components of bones and whatnot, skeletons of other dead things on other humans. I think it takes humans and other animals too.
It does. Yeah, it has like a horse leg and like a different kind of rib cage. Yeah, it's got all these crazy things.
And it's apparently just harmless.
Mm-hmm.
And not intelligent per se, not in the same sense as like a human being or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it just roams around in the mist as like a scavenger of sorts.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And it's translucent. That's how you can see like all of the bones inside it, but you can kind of see muscles too a little bit, like it's trying to create muscles around the bones that it absorbs. And it absorbs it, like climbs over a dead body and absorbs it, and the bones remain inside of it, and it's like transparent. You can see it as it moves around. And it's one of those creatures that is the folklore creatures, and Vin's very like scared of it. But Kelsier knows that it's like, it's completely tame, just this thing that you don't have to worry about. And as so they see the Mist Wraith, and then they continue around through the countryside, and that's when they get to the carriage. And this is when we meet another character called Sazed. He is a terraceman. So there's mention of the terrace in some of the epilogues of the chapters, those little epigraphs, the terrace people. But he is a terraceman. He's a steward, so he's essentially just a butler. And he's the one who's driving the cart to, I think, a town called Felice. Which is where Renoux's mansion is, and apparently the noble houses, they have a keep inside Luthadel, and then they have other houses spread out outside of the city. Felice is one of those cities where it's sort of the rich people go to have like mansions away from their mansions.
As you do
when you're of old money. It's a really nice place. I think there's part where Vin is sort of taken aback with how clean everything is, like so the ash comes down every day. People have to sweep it up, and they sweep it into like these canals that sort of wash it out. But there's just, in Luthadel, there's mist everywhere. Like it gathers in the corners inside houses and like all this stuff. But in this city, or in this mansion, everything is like completely immaculate. And also all of the people who work for Renoux, the ska, are all kind of like smiling and happy. And she thinks this is very strange. Not something she's used to at all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it turns out it's just simply that they're treated properly.
Yeah.
And not abused in any way.
Exactly.
Despite their stature. But, because we don't know if the real Renoux would do that, or Lord Renoux.
Right. Renoux,
This Renoux that greets them out of the carriage is the
actor.
The imposter. The actor. That's right.
Yeah.
And Vin was told by Kelsier it's an actor, but she is completely convinced that he is probably the genuine article if he's done so much training.
That's right. Yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
I think she sort of draws a parallel between this guy's acting and Cayman's acting, and it's just
Yes.
like, wow, this guy's on like a completely different level.
Yeah, actually professional. He could pass him off as the Lord Renoux himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
For Sazed, we mentioned Terrorsmen, and in the world of Mistborn, Terrorsmen
Mhm.
are just another race of people.
Yeah, they're like,
They're like,
so they're, I think they're typically like darker skinned. They're tall and lanky. And they're from the mountains to the north. They're like mountain people.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And the one other thing about this chapter that I think is important is when they're on the carriage going back and forth, like Vin is still very distrustful of Kelsier. And like she says things like, he's not telling me about these medals because he wants to have something to hold over me so I don't leave. Yeah, and Kelsier throws her the bag that he got from busting Cayman or whatever, which was the 3,000 steel boxings, or just boxings, I think is what they're
The
called.
money. Yeah.
The money. And it's enough for like Vin to live on for a long time. And he's like, you can take it and leave if you want at any time. Like, I'm not here. Like, she can't sort of understand that there's that kind of trust amongst his crew and his friends. So he's trying to like push her away, just to sort of, again, like make her trust him.
Yeah, he's forcing her to make a choice and confronting her about what she wants. Because he's noticing that Vin is being sneaky. Vin is not being very, I wouldn't say open. I would say just hiding from Kelsier and always has like an ulterior motive. So Kelsier says, hey, like you said, take the money and run. I don't care. But if you're staying, it's because you want to be here and you're going to be part of the team.
Yeah, you believe in the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
believe in the mission.
Yeah. I think there's one last thing. So there was decided at some point that Vin would be the one to infiltrate the high society.
She wasn't the first choice. She wasn't the first choice.
She wasn't. And I can't remember exactly who the first choice was, but at one point there was also Clubs recommended his like
Spooks?
nephew Spook, yeah, or Lestiborns, is his full name, who has a very weird way of speaking. It's like some Eastern dialect apparently. And when he talks, they're just like, no, this kid's out. So they pick Vin, and they mention it to Renoux. I think the initial idea was for her to be Renoux's daughter, but again, the guy who's playing Renoux knows a little bit, and he's like, no, that won't work. She can just be like a distant cousin who's coming to like learn more about the city, all that kind of stuff. And they basically set up her backstory. And this is being the end of this chapter is the end of part 1. So they basically set up like Vin's going to be doing some Mistborn training. She's going to be learning about the noble houses and how to be a noble woman, essentially.
Pretty much. I think in parts of these chapters, I think it's chapter 8 or chapter 9, we find Vin and Kelsier are also continually training in Felice.
Yes.
And Vin is like still very amateur about it, but she's proven to get stronger and stronger at her abilities with allomancy. And she's getting frustrated that she can't best Kelsier in a lot of the fighting that they're doing across the tops of the buildings and whatnot. But when they go back to the House Renoux, Kelsier just approaches Sazed and says, hey, how is her training doing? Sazed's like, she's so stubborn, just not really taking, liking to learning high society. But he notices that Vin is like a quick learner and has like some potential in there. And Kelsier expresses the same thing and a bit of a concern that Vin is getting a lot stronger than he anticipated and could get a lot stronger than he is. Yeah. Because he's mentioning a bit where he and Vin are pushing back against each other, and Vin's against a tree, like pinned against a tree, and she's forcing herself against Kelsier. But the force is like still unrelenting on both of them, and so the tree breaks, and Vin just gets very upset about it when Kelsier comes down and says, "I beat you." But Kelsier was like a bit worried that because she's getting a lot stronger, and I don't know what to do about that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. That does all happen in the next chapter, and that is
The
so
next chapter? Oh, that is it. Did you read for too far ahead?
no, it's chapter 9. That
Oh,
happens
okay.
in chapter 9. Yeah. So yeah, to touch on a few things that you said. So yes, you're right. She's a really fast learner.
Hmm.
And there's Kelsier is comparing how quickly he was learning to like manipulate pushes and stuff compared to how quickly
Mm.
Vin is doing it, and she's doing it much faster. And something important that we kind of didn't talk about when Kelsier was explaining like the Mistborn powers and burning metals and stuff. Burning a metal isn't the source of power. It's the ability.
Mm.
It gives you the ability to access it. The source of it and the strength of the power comes from the individual.
Hmm.
So Vin pushing the way that she's pushing is her inherent power and her inherent ability to like use these powers. And it's sort of alluding to the fact that she's better at this than Kelsier is. She's could potentially be a stronger Mistborn than Kelsier,
Hmm.
which is really cool. So yeah, you're right. So yeah, chapter 9 picks up a few months after chapter 10, or sorry, chapter 8. Um, and Vin and Kelsier have been practicing for a while. Like you said, they're doing their uh, Mistborn fighting or whatever every night before Kelsier goes out to one of the noble houses and sows chaos. And at the end, when Kelsier and Vin are having this conversation that you were talking about, one of the things, because you're right, Kelsier is just like, oh, she's learning so fast, and I don't have a lot of time to teach her everything. Sazed suggests that she learn some of the abilities from the crew members because they're all very skilled. So, for example, like learning soothing from Breeze and learning hand-to-hand combat as a pewter arm from Ham, and like learning how to smoke from Clubs,
Mm.
which is a really good idea because it doesn't require Kelsier to be the one to teach her everything. And all these guys have been doing it their entire lives, so they're very skilled when it comes to using these abilities.
It'd be really interesting to see how she progresses and which one she starts favoring more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She can't be great at all of them, I don't think.
No, I wouldn't think so. It'd be a bit of a cliche if she was the best at
Exactly.
all of
Yes,
them.
it'd be a big chosen one cliche.
Yeah, which she really, I don't know. I don't get chosen one vibes.
Not
No
yet,
one
but
gives me
there's
chosen one vibes. Oh, not yet. You said, oh.
no. I'm no, not yet. But there's definitely going back to like we did with Elantris. There's definitely a lot of Star Wars in this book. Kelsier is the Obi-Wan, and Vin is Luke.
Oh my
Um,
god.
right, like the apprentice, the master and apprentice
Mm-hmm.
relationship is definitely there. I don't know who else other people would be in terms of Star Wars. I don't know if there's a Han Solo yet. Anyways,
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
yeah. So yeah, more. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention. One of these chapters, like in the epigraph, there was
Mm.
actually a mention of someone by name, which hasn't happened yet, and his name was Rashek. So the epigraph is written from the person who we assume is this like hero from the past who saved the world, because that's what he's talking about. Like, I'm a hero, I'm supposed to save the world.
Mm.
And he meets I think a Terrace Pac-Man named Rashek. And what they're doing is they're going up this hill where some power is that they need to destroy or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. But yeah, Rashek is a name that is mentioned in the epilogue, and no other names have been mentioned. Not even this person's name who's writing it.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be something there, and
There might be.
yeah, it's hard to say, but there could be.
You mentioned something about religions,
Mm-hmm.
and when
Oh.
Vin and Sazed were talking,
Mm-hmm.
like Vin was just getting to know Sazed. What's his, goal in all of this? What does he want? Why is he joining this? Because
Mm-hmm.
uh, according to Vin's knowledge to what talisman are, they're obedient servants, and they're
Yes,
great as, um, like manservants,
stewards.
valets, butlers, stewards, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like as the kid who's talking, Sazed really wants to return the knowledge of all the religions that have been destroyed.
Yes.
by a Lord ruler over these years.
That's like his passion, is learning about and spreading knowledge about the religions that existed before the Lord ruler's ascendance, essentially.
And he is part of a smaller group within the Talisman that are preservers of this knowledge.
The keepers.
So, the keepers, yeah.
Yes.
Literally keeping that knowledge. And so he has, I think we see a bit of an anger or a slight emotional change when he's like showing disdain for the Empire. And it's,
because he loves, that's his thing. He loves the religions. He loves learning about them and imparting knowledge about them. And also Vin is taken aback that he can like retain all of this detailed knowledge about like over 500 religions. Yeah, he just knows them and he can like pull them out of his head and just be like, this one's about this. Because he, so I think it's in chapter 10 and there's a little bit before in chapter 9 where he, with both Vin and Kelsier, he's like, oh, here's a religion you might like. And he tells them about it, about the like principles of it. And it's like, do you want to convert to this religion? He does that with Kelsier, I think, in chapter 10. And with Vin, he like mentions different types of religions that existed prior to the Lord Ruler's ascendance. So yeah, chapter 10, the last one. So this is the one where we see the recruitment efforts of Kelsier's crew. So Vin is going through Luthadel. It's dingy and there's a lot of ash everywhere. And she's in like the Ska slums. And she gets to a soup kitchen where she basically is supposed to learn about soothing from Breeze. But this is also where a lot of the Ska at the soup kitchen have come specifically to hear someone speak about the rebellion. And that person's Kelsier. Excuse me. So she goes into the soup kitchen. Like some of the people who work there know who she is, so they nod her in a certain direction. She goes in that direction, and Breeze is waiting there. I think Ham is there too, and Ham tries to like have a philosophical discussion about whether or not what they're doing is good, because the Lord Ruler is technically God, and God decides what's good and bad. And
Ham is a bit of a dum-dum.
He's like a philosopher. He's an armchair philosopher.
Yeah.
And he wants everyone to sort of take part in this conversation, but Vin's answers are just like, who cares? Like, essentially, like, what does it matter? And he's kind of upset with this. Breeze finds it a little bit funny. One important thing is that when Ham is talking about Lord Ruler as a god, Breeze corrects him that the Lord Ruler is actually a sliver of a god. So he's not actually a god. He's got godly powers, but he's not a full-on like god.
Would he be considered a demigod, or is he just?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's the exact term that you would want to take. But he's like not omnipotent. He has limitations. So we find out. So a meeting starts, and we find out that the room that they're in is a room where they can sort of like look through peepholes to see what's going on in the meeting. And Breeze is there as a soother, and he has a bunch of his apprentices inside the dining room as soothers as well. So basically what they do is, as Kelsier's giving his speech, Breeze will tell one of his apprentices to send out a different serving girl. And based on what's happening in the speech, the serving girl comes out, and the color of the dress that she's wearing signifies to the apprentices what emotion to soothe in the people in the audience. So if he's saying something that's supposed to get them angry, he'll send out like a girl in a red dress. And if they're supposed to be getting patriotic, he'll send out someone in a blue dress or a green dress or something like that. So this goes on, and Vin the entire time is, I think she has like copper or something burning to detect if her emotions are being pushed, but she's like taken aback a bit by how subtle Breeze's touch is and how good he is at doing what she does. Because like at first she was just like, oh, like I want to learn from Kelsier. What am I going to learn from these guys? These guys aren't actual Mistborn. Like these guys are just Mistings. But yeah, she's starting.
Yeah, she's got like this arrogant streak, like, oh, now I'm high and mighty. I'm gonna poo-poo you,
as the kind of that you would expect from someone her age who inherits a title that she didn't have to earn, right? Like
she thinks she's the main character,
and she is. But
well, I mean, but she's got the main character syndrome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I think that's a big thing, is that like she didn't have to earn the title of Mistborn. She was born with it. And now that she's been given it, there's a little bit of arrogance, but she quickly corrects itself, or she corrects herself when she sees how skilled Breeze is. So yeah, Kelsier gives his speech. It doesn't go well. They don't get a ton of interest. There's a lot of pushback. And essentially they learn that they're just sort of like, they're falling short of their recruitment numbers. Like they review how many people they have recruited, and it's not going to be enough. So they got to try something new, but we don't know what that something new is yet. So yeah, after that meeting, there's a little bit of a scene here with Kelsier, and we learn more about the Lord Ruler's palace, which is called Critic Shaw, which is a badass name. And it's a name in the Terrace language, which is what Sazed is. He's a Terraceman. That stands for the Hill of 1,000 Spires. So the building is just like this tangled mess of like, peaks and different buildings sticking out in different directions, and all these sharp edges essentially is what I think of. And this is when Kelsier talks about like the keepers and how they were persecuted. I think the Lord Ruler is like hunted down the keepers specifically, Terracemen as well, but yeah, keepers for whatever reason. And then Kelsier and Sazed have a discussion about one of the forgotten religions.
My guess is that one of those religions holds the truth of the origin of the Lord Ruler, and he doesn't want things to get that out. That's probably my hot take.
I mean,
that's my hot take.
That's a good one. That's probably why he took out a lot of the keepers.
But that being said, Sazed doesn't mention which of those religions would. Like, if my theory is correct, maybe Sazed is unaware of that. He's like, oh, maybe he'll realize, like, oh, that's probably why he's killing everybody in my sect or something like that.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, that's a good theory. I like that one. So the very end of this chapter is we get Marsh coming back. So this is when they talk about the recruitment not meeting their expectations. And Vin. So Marsh is kind of pretty much on board with this, but he's just like, I don't know how I'm going to get into the ministry. Like, it's very difficult for someone to get in, especially a ska. I think is probably unheard of. But again, Vin to the rescue, just like she did with the Pits of Hathsin plan. She reminds Kelsier about Cayman's transport con from the very, very beginning of the book. So this con, as a reminder, was for a contract to send ministry recruits from their training center in the north into Luthadel and back and forth using these canal boats. So Vin says that they could reach out to the guy who's running the con still, who has the contract, and be like, we're going to sneak someone onto one of these training ships and send them up north to do their training, and then they can come back. So again, Kelsier's just like, holy crap, Vin, this is a great plan. Let's do it. I don't think Marsh has agreed at this point, because the ending of this chapter, is when the meeting gets interrupted, when one of Ham's guards... Right? No, one of Ham's guards comes in and says that Cayman's lair was finally found by one of the Inquisitors. So if you'll remember at the beginning, the Inquisitors were on to Vin, and one of the Steel Inquisitors was following Cayman back to his lair, but Kelsier distracted him and then went to Cayman's lair himself and kind of took it over for himself. So it looks like now the Inquisitors have finally gotten to it. So Chapter 11, which I haven't read yet, will likely be the aftermath of what the Inquisitors are going to do to the people who are left in Cayman's lair.
I may have gone ahead, but only by one chapter.
That's okay. So anything that I missed? Anything that...
That's pretty spot on. Yeah. I think I don't remember if they mentioned the name of the second person that Cayman works with, because in the beginning we get...
They did. I can't remember his name. It's something I can't remember his name either.
Yeah. I didn't write in my notes. Sorry.
No, I didn't either.
It didn't seem important in the beginning, so I felt like he was just like a one-off, or like they come and visit him again. But it turns out they are pretty early on. Anyway, I think that's pretty good. Okay.
Then I want to ask about your how you're like overall this section of the book. What are your feelings? What do you think? Where do you think we're going? Do you think the plan's going to work?
It doesn't. It sounds like the plan will change a lot.
Yeah.
So it'll be a lot of touch and go, make adjustments, and then saying, fuck it, throw everything in the wind. It's all or nothing, which is probably what's going to happen. They're
Yeah.
going to find a vulnerability or seize an opportunity that's given in front of them. It might be a trap. I don't know. But considering that chapter 10 tells us that things aren't going as planned with recruitment, it's going to be hard, and we haven't found a way to infiltrate yet, but we found some, a potential path. It sounds like there will be more complications or more realistic events happening from what Kelsier and the rest of the crew wanted or envisioned happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there will be a delay in terms of when they'll strike, but I feel like Kelsier is very adamant that they have to strike soon. So there will be some, I don't know what's the right term for that. They might, like I said, just move on with the plan, but remove some things or try to make do with the best with what they have.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I'm glad you brought that up, because in reading this again, like when they're going over the plan, it feels really like patchwork, like stitched together.
Yeah.
Like maybe this will all fall into the right, like maybe all these pieces will fall into the place, but looking at the plan as a whole, I don't know. Like it's pretty, there's some unique takes and like ways for them to achieve their goals, but I think for it all to come together, that is asking a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate Sanderson of doing, because typically it'll be, yes, we did it, and then they'll follow through with it.
Right.
But
yeah. Like
this is really good.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're questioning whether or not these guys can actually pull this off. So the book's got to end somehow. So let's see what happens.
Somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I did look ahead a bit. I didn't read ahead. Well, I've already read this book, but I looked ahead, and chapters 11 to 15, which are what we're going to do for the next episode, aren't too long. And that also takes us to the end of part 2. So that's kind of perfect. Yeah. So we can read to the end of part 2 for next time. Do we want to try and make a promise that we'll have another episode out before the end of January?
Let's see. What's the date today? Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you think so? The date as of recording is January 14th.
That is true. Yeah. And listeners, if you find one in February or March, we've failed to keep a promise.
That's right. Yeah. So let's shoot for that. Let's shoot to have the next episode, which is going to be the end of part 2, chapters 10 to 15 inclusive, before the end of January. And I'm going to try and get this one up pretty quick.
I will do the same.
All right. Sounds good. So yeah, I'm enjoying this book. I'm enjoying revisiting it. I'm glad you're liking it more than Mistborn. And to echo what your friends have been saying, yes, it does. It only gets better from here. Like it just keeps getting better and better. So there's no like low points. I think if there is a low point for us, it would be Elantris, and that's not really a low point.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's behind us.
Exactly.
I can't believe it.
Exactly. I know.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm amped. I'm excited for this.
Me too. So yeah, next time, next 5 chapters.
Alrighty. Do you think that'd be another one for the book?
I was just waiting for it. That's what I was waiting for this whole time.
Yeah, I felt the hesitation. You're just like, is he gonna say it? Is he gonna say it?
I'm trying to like set you up here for it.
Chapters what? Like, what? To be honest, I totally forgot about that until 20 minutes ago.
Really? Okay. Wow. Fair enough.
Yeah. I don't know what triggered it.
Figure out how to eke that in. By the way, I was going to ask, so the cat behind your desk is new. What is that?
Oh, this is from a content creator that I supported as part of their thing. It's I kind of wanted like a little animalistic plushie.
Yeah, no, it's adorable.
It's so cute. Puss is his name.
Okay.
The content creator is Rando Wiz. They make a lot of funny bits and memes and whatnot.
Oh, cool.
And the cat is part of a lot of the comics and animations.
Nice.
So shout out to Rando Wiz. There we
go.
All
right, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Feels at home with all the plants.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's great. Looks really good back there.
Just ignore the woodworking in the living room. Ignore it.
I wasn't going to say anything. It's going to be show and tell next episode. At the beginning of the episode, you have to show us what you made.
I could have something at least not painted, but at least something to carry in. Be like, this is what it is.
All right. I'll ask.
All right. Until then.
All right. All right. Until the next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.